The ever-quirky and refined 2-Point series goes back to its roots a bit with some heightened urgency and a nice helping of man-eating plants. Yet, it's the perfect jumping-on point for newcomers to the management sim genre, and it's tough to put down considering its high skill ceiling. 2-Point Museum manages to take the consequences gameplay of 2-Point Hospital and pair it with Campus's more creative toolbox to good effect. At first, I was a bit surprised with the kind of urgency required to keep your museum afloat, but in hindsight, management sims tend to get the trickiest when entertainment and finances intermingle. Museums, with their expensive world wonders housed within, can lay waste to the bank account or reward it handsomely in equal measure. So it's rather accurate how 2-Point Museum balances challenge and creativity here. Exhibits fall apart and lose their luster over time, causing customers to leave or even potentially get injured from the toxic waste. This is where staff comes in. A healthy supply of janitors and exhibit experts are crucial for a cleanly and well-maintained museum. I like how it's possible to still accomplish objectives and stars without going super in-depth with the various systems. Yet, the toughest objectives more or less require that kind of in-depth micromanagement, providing a high skill ceiling for the veterans. For example, you can set detailed patrol areas for each employee, adjust individual salaries, name various staffers, and even change the colors of their outfits. But if you just want to get by, assigning them a ticket stand to work and occasionally training them with new skills when needed, that'll keep you afloat. I chose not to name any staff or color anything because there was enough to keep me occupied as is. Turns out museum curators have a lot of plates to spin. Just obtaining exhibits in the first place is an adventure in itself. Instead of an exhibit menu housing an infinite stock of, say, Lonehenges, yes, the game is punny, you have to go on expeditions to procure one. This makes each exhibit feel substantial and valuable, since you can't just buy them from a menu. Each expedition requires staff members specialized in a particular field and trained in the required qualifications, or skills as I like to think of them. The way the campaign eases you through these expeditions is smooth and balanced. You never quite feel like you don't have the staff resources to send out, yet you always could train and hire more for the riskier, higher quality exhibits. The riskier the expedition, the more outlandish and popular the exhibit, requiring a large group of highly trained staff to unearth.
Disinterested guests are reminded that not everything has to be a party, okay?
Part of the urgency of 2-Point Museum lies in the many threats that expeditions pose for staff. Untrained and underleveled staff can go MIA or even eaten alive by wild plant life. There's a marginal amount of randomness involved in these events, but the game always lets you know when your staff is trained enough to invalidate injuries and possible losses. Each point of interest has a set of possible exhibits to obtain, and the quality of the exhibits depends on collective staff level and amount of training, adding a nice role-playing element to the game. Your hard-won exhibits have 3 core conditions which increase their value and popularity with visitors. Buzz defines an exhibit's popularity and rate at which visitors donate money. Multi-part dinosaur exhibits require all parts for full buzz, which, if accomplished, results in a heap of cash in prospective visitors. Knowledge is the trickiest exhibition attribute to raise, and you'll want to raise it considering the amount of special guests and fantastic visitors who thirst for high-knowledge exhibits. Knowledge also opens up perks for exhibits, which range from slowing the rate of decay to some old fossils managing to energize guests more. I also like how there's always a use for duplicate exhibits. Throwing these duplicate exhibits in the analysis machine generates higher knowledge for that particular exhibit while bestowing some perks. Selling is also viable, or you keep duplicates in your inventory when an old exhibit decays. But a decaying exhibit isn't all you have to worry about. Thieves like to bag expensive exhibits to sell on the black market, and the more popular the museum, the more attracted they get. In these situations, it's necessary to fit the museum with a security room and plenty of cameras. A wonderful little wrinkle with security is how customers feel more anxious with lots of cameras and patrols about. And so, it's within this gameplay loop of managing expeditions to acquire exhibits and maintaining how the museum is run that sits at the core of 2-Point Museum. You always feel pressure to take care of something, if you're not setting up an expedition team to nab your museum's newest oddity. It's balanced just right so that management of these systems don't feel too overwhelming, which is admittedly helped by the pause and slowdown features. So, the game has a lot of intertwined systems and it's fun juggling them, but how is the overall progression? Like previous 2-point games, earning stars is a primary objective with the campaign mode. Earning curator stars for one of your museums involves completing dozens of objectives and requirements, giving this game a healthy amount of playtime. And there's always a hefty batch of rewards upon gaining a star, from epic new exhibits to upgraded staff facilities. Unlike past games, museums aren't limited to just 3 stars, allowing for endless advancement of a museum. Oh, and yes, I said museums with a plural because you could put your prehistoric museum's progress on hold while managing your haunted house one, and with no penalty. Each museum has its own unique theme, complete with tons of unique exhibits and decorations all its own, and their star objectives vary as well. Of course, you can mix and match different themed exhibits together into a single museum if you wish to, but that's best demonstrated within the vast sandbox mode. Sandbox mode allows you to determine how much cash you start with, how fast the exhibits decay, and so on, tailoring your difficulty and restrictions however you want. Access to different themes is pretty much unrestricted, but you still have to obtain the exhibits themselves through Expedition. A lot of the same building tools are here from 2-Point Campus, allowing ample freedom regarding the placements of walls and floors and the like. If you have the guts, go and build a super museum containing every theme. I'm looking forward to what the fandom creates within 2-Point Museum Sandbox mode. This brings me to the UI and menu design. As usual, 2-Point Studios make some consistently clean menus. There's a lot of info to keep track of, but it's all generally available without congesting the screen too much. The collapsible menus at the bottom help declutter things a bit too. However, on console, things aren't as clean as they could be. Menu build description panels get on my nerves with how often they block the other build options. And on console, it's impossible to collapse these info panels, making me spend more time than I'd like trying to see what decoration or object is hidden behind the descriptive panel. What makes this even more laborious is the control pad responsiveness on controllers, of which there isn't much. The game often neglects your controller pad inputs, making for a janky and inconsistent menu scrolling experience. I'm thankful for control sticks because input delay doesn't affect them. The general interface on console is acceptable and clean, sure, but it just isn't as convenient and smooth as mouse and keyboard. Every menu action requires you to press the specific menu button to navigate between one of multiple panels, while on PC, you just slide and click exactly where you want to go effortlessly. That said, every object, room, and NPC type is distinctly outlined and color coordinated to give the players all the info they need right away. When placing heaters and coolers, for example, an environmental heat map overlays the screen to let you know the temperatures of every area, which is useful for frozen exhibits, or their hot botanic opposites. Barring the console-specific irritants, 2-Point Museum controls wonderfully well, sporting efficiently clean UI. Of course, what really separates 2-Point games from other management titles is its quirky tone, something which Museum proudly puts on display. Tourists get eaten by man-eating plant exhibits, kids climb and fall off stuff constantly, and there's no shortage of ridiculous Yeti guests and the occasional ghost hovering in the ticket queue. The radio station banter is particularly brilliant, referencing past 2-Point games and making fun of itself regularly. Best of all, the 2-Point radio doesn't outstay its welcome or feel repetitive even after dozens of hours of play. I find 2-Point Hospital a bit more clever with its gameplay puns though. Who could forget the light-headed patients with actual light bulbs for heads? All in all, 2-Point Museum offers a familiar gameplay loop and general fun factor to previous games in the series. It blends the urgency of Hospital with the creative tools of Campus to create an addicting and satisfying management sim experience. There's a lot of replayability here, and its tone and content manage to stay fresh, just like any well-maintained museum. While it's true that this title doesn't really do much new or invigorating for the series besides the museum structure, it manages to balance the best aspects of past games together into a satisfying experience. 2-Point Museum is a must-play for fans of the series and a solid game to dig into for management sim players in general. Hey, did you know that we at Gaming Bolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.